right, responsible use of AI in healthcare. Whose responsibility is it? So the year was 1966. For those of you who may not remember this, there was the Jetsons. They were an adorable, futuristic family, and they had a robot named Rosie. Rosie did all sorts of very helpful things. She cooked, she cleaned, she might even make the occasional martini. So lots of useful things for this family. At some point, Rosie would go haywire, and unfortunately, lots of hilarious antics would ensue. Adorable for a cartoon, and not so adorable for healthcare. So we're not quite here yet. This is where we see the world of AI potentially replacing your doctor, but humans are still safe. However, the stakes are much higher, and when AI or anything in this realm goes haywire, it can be a real problem. All right, a little bit about me. I'm an engineer, not a robot or a doctor, so just so you're aware. I have about 20 years in technology and healthcare experience. I went to Johns Hopkins. I have a graduate degree in quantitative methods in public health, as well as an MBA and a BS in engineering. I am a current employee of Microsoft, and for the legal disclaimer out there, these views represent my own, not necessarily those of Microsoft. And the material is made of publicly sourced content, so anything that would be non-proprietary. And as Sal said, thank you to PACE Healthcare Capital, and Chicago Blend for the opportunity to explore an investment thesis in healthcare-enabled fertility solutions. All right, so where could AI really help in healthcare? So we've heard a lot of buzz about it in the news, but just a few to highlight here. It could potentially reduce medical errors, so perhaps reducing any fatigue or errors that would occur from clinicians' tiredness, improve access to care in less populated areas, maybe where there aren't clinicians available, prioritize or refer specialty care, so if you have a unique condition, improve clinical decision support, enable personalized treatment, so something that would be unique to you or your loved ones, or perhaps even accelerate drug discovery cycles. But it could also increase risk and potentially do harm. The stakes are very high here. So here are a few articles that are just called out. AI posing an existential threat, potentially addressing AI hallucinations, so basically when AI gets it wrong, potentially also some biases in clinical trials, and also perhaps exacerbating areas where racial bias already exists. I'm going to talk about the last two with some examples from startups. This article in particular, just to give you a little bit of background, it's a very detailed article, but I'm going to go through kind of just two main areas. So what happened and why? So what happened? Health systems rely on commercial prediction algorithms to identify and help patients with complex health needs, and then ultimately assign the care that they receive. This algorithm in particular had significant racial bias. For a given risk score, the Black patients were considerably sicker than white patients, as evidenced by clinical signals. However, the algorithm predicts healthcare costs rather than illnesses. And since there was a historical bias in the data where Black patients did not typically get as much care as white patients, this exacerbated itself throughout this algorithm and then the way that care was assigned. So in this case, healthcare costs are not an effective proxy for overall health. Why? Why did this happen? So, what we're seeing is there might be some disparities between people building them or through that data that was used to train them. Often they rely on past data to predict future needs. And the most important here is often these algorithms are proprietary. This study was so unique because it actually peeled back the covers on what can typically be a very hidden process. So in the world of startups, this one actually just 2 weeks ago was funded. So there's a company called Triomics, and they are encouraging participation in clinical trials for cancer. And they are going through the data themselves. It's not necessarily based on a clinician's recommendation or your clinician, very busy clinician, to be able to make that recommendation. They're combing through the data, and then people who are eligible can be enrolled directly. And you'll see a little bit more information here in terms of transparency. This is their model, and a few things I'll just call out here is that they have experts in AI and clinical workflows. They show its work, so they'll tell you about it, they'll explain itself to talk about hallucination, and it will also pick out pieces where the patient chart should be cited in order to encourage that transparency. All right, so what organizations are involved here? I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but these are ones that are typical to healthcare and healthcare-related technologies. So the FDA, This is just published in March 2024, so just a few months ago, providing greater transparency on how their product centers are collaborating, critical aspects of use, transparency, explainability, governance, bias, cybersecurity, and quality assurance. And a quote here from the commissioner who says that the FDA does not regulate the administrative functions, but when it involves patient safety or there is significant risk, the FDA is involved. But we would have to hire 3 or 4 times as many people to take on what is coming on. So things are moving very quickly, and the FDA doesn't have a perfect answer. The publication here, I will just call out the part at the bottom. It just says that the traditional paradigm is not designed for adaptive artificial intelligence and machine learning. Many changes to artificial intelligence and machine learning-driven devices may need a pre-market review. So there isn't really a definitive answer here on how healthcare is tackling this, at least from the perspective of the FDA. CHAI, this is a public-private partnership. So this is an organization that's formed of 1,300 organizations, actually started with 50, so it's really grown astronomically over time. The founding partners, at least from a technology standpoint, are Amazon, Google, Microsoft, as well as CVS Health, as well as a lot of the hospital systems here in the US. They published a framework in April 2023, and I'm going to call out just some of these elements here: usefulness, safety, accountability and transparency, explainability and interpretability, and fairness. All right, 2 more to go through. The ONC, they have their own rule. So of course, there's another one. So the HT1 rule, published in December 2023. This is important if anybody is working on electronic health records. So this pertains to you. And you'll see that there's a whole nother set of criteria here with a cute algorithm called FAVES. And it aligns with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And last but not least, AHIMA. This is from just last week, so May 16th. While guardrails must permit users to understand how AI comes to its conclusions, they shouldn't risk intellectual property. So there's a lot of debate on how this is used. And ultimately, the answer is there isn't one single framework. There's no particular organization that's out there. And ultimately, this will affect you and your loved ones. So whose responsibility is it? It's actually yours. You are the responsible people who are in this ecosystem. Now that you know that these frameworks exist, make sure you're talking with your investors, with your founders, with your engineering teams, and asking them what are they considering, what are they using, and how are they ensuring that the AI deployed in their products and services is of responsible use. Let's stay in touch, and would love to take any questions afterwards. Thank you.